There's more seats on this side if people are walking in late. So just to make sure you're in CS 231N, the Deep Learning or Neural Network class for visual recognition. Anybody in the wrong class? Okay, good. All right, so welcome and Happy New Year. Happy first day of winter break. So this class, CS 231N, this is the second offering of this class when we have literally doubled our enrollment from 180 people last time we offered to about 350 of you signed up. Just a couple of words to make us all legally covered. We are video recording this class, so you know, if you're uncomfortable about this for today, just go behind that camera or go to a corner that the camera is not going to turn. But we are going to send out forms for you to fill out in terms of allowing the video recording. So that's just one bit of housekeeping. So all right, my name is Fei Li. I'm a professor at the Computer Science Department. So this class I'm co-teaching with two senior graduate students, and one of them is here, is Andre Karpathy. Andre, can you just say hi to everybody? We have, well, I don't think Andre needs too much introduction. A lot of you probably know his work, follow his blog, his Twitter follower. Andre has way more followers than I do, so he's very popular. And also Justin Johnson, who is still traveling internationally, but will be back in a few days. So Andre and Justin will be picking up the bulk of the lecture teaching. And today I'll be giving the first lecture, but as you probably can see that I'm expecting a newborn very soon, speaking of weeks. So you'll see more of Andre and Justin in lecture time. We will also introduce a whole team of TAs towards the end of this lecture. Again, people who are looking for seats, if you go out of that door and come back, there is a whole bunch of seats on this side. Okay, so let's for this lecture we're going to give an introduction of the class, the kind of problems we work on, and the tools we'll be learning. So again, welcome to CS 231N. This is a vision class. It's based on a very specific modeling architecture called neural network, and even more specifically, mostly on convolutional neural network. And a lot of you hear this term maybe through a popular press article or coverage. We tend to call this the deep learning network. Vision is one of the fastest growing field of artificial intelligence. In fact, Cisco has estimated, and we are on day 4 of this, by 2016, which we already have arrived, more than 85% of the internet cyberspace data is in the form of pixels, or what they call multimedia. So we basically have entered an age of vision, of images and videos. And why is it so? Well, partially and to a large extent is because of the explosion of both the internet as a carrier of data as well as sensors. We have more sensors than the number of people on Earth these days. Every one of you is carrying some kind of smartphones, digital cameras, and you know, cars are running on the street with cameras. So the sensors have really enabled the explosion of visual data on the internet. But visual data or pixel data is also the hardest data to harness. So if you have heard my previous talks and some other talks by computer vision professors, we call this the dark matter of the internet. Why is this the dark matter? Just like the universe is consisted of 85% dark matter, dark energy, is these matters and energy that is very hard to observe. We can infer it by mathematical models in the universe. On the internet, these are the matters. Pixel data are the data that we don't know. We have a hard time grasping the contents. Here's one very, very simple specs for you to consider. So today, YouTube servers, for every 60 seconds, we have more than 150 hours of videos uploaded onto YouTube servers. For every 60 seconds. Think about the amount of data. There's no way that human eyes can sift through this massive amount of data and make annotations, labeling it, and describe the contents. So think from the perspective of the YouTube team or Google company. If they want to help us to search, index, manage, and of course for their purpose put advertisement or whatever, manipulate the content of the data, we're at a loss because nobody can hand annotate this. The only hope we can do this is through vision technology, to be able to label the objects, find the scenes, find the frames, locate where that basketball video where Kobe Bryant is making like that awesome shot. And so these are the problems that we are facing today, the massive amount of data and the challenges of the dark matter. So computer vision is a field that touches upon many other fields of studies. So I'm sure that even sitting here, many of you come from computer science, but many of you come from biology, psychology, are specializing in natural language processing or graphics or robotics or medical imaging and so on. So as a field, computer vision is really a truly interdisciplinary field. The problems we work on, the models we use, touches on engineering, physics, biology, psychology, computer science, and mathematics. So just a little bit of a more personal touch. I am the director of the computer vision lab at Stanford. In our lab, I work with graduate students and postdocs and even undergraduate students on a number of topics, and most dear to our own research, who some of them, that Andre, Justin come from my lab, a number of TAs come from my lab. We work on machine learning, which is a superset of deep learning. We work a lot on cognitive science and neuroscience, as well as the intersection between NLP and speech. So that's the kind of landscape of computer vision research that my lab works in. So also to put things in a little more perspective, what are the computer vision classes that we offer here at Stanford through the computer science department? Clearly you're in this class, CS21N, and so some of you who have never taken computer vision probably have heard of computer vision for the first time, probably should have or already done CS131. That's an intro class of previous quarter we offered, and then next quarter, which normally is offered this quarter, but this year is a little shifted. There's an important graduate level computer vision class called CS231A, offered by Professor Silvio Savarese, who works in robotic and 3D vision. And a lot of you ask us the question that are these, do these replace each other? This class CS231N versus CS231A? And the answer is no. And if you're interested in a broader coverage of tools and topics of computer vision, as well as some of the fundamental topics that relates you to 3D vision, robotic vision, and visual recognition, you should consider taking 231A. That is the more general class. 231N, which we'll go into starting today more deeply, focuses on a specific angle of both problem and model. The model is neural network, and the angle is visual recognition mostly. But of course they have a little bit of overlap, but that's the major difference. And next quarter we also have possibly a couple of advanced seminar level class, but that's still in the formation stage, so you just have to check the syllabus. So that's the kind of computer vision curriculum we offer this year at Stanford. Any questions so far? Yes?
Is 131 a strict requirement for this class?
131 is not a strict requirement for this class, but you'll soon see that if you've never heard of computer vision for the first time, I suggest you find a way to catch up, because this class assumes a basic level of understanding of computer vision. You can browse the notes and so on. All right. Okay, so the rest of today is that I will give a very brief, broad stroke history of computer vision, and then we'll talk about 231 and a little bit in terms of the organization of the class. I actually really care about sharing with you this brief history of computer vision, because you know, you might be here primarily because of your interest in this really interesting tool called deep learning, and this is the purpose of this class. We're offering you an in-depth look and just journey through what this deep learning model is. But without understanding the problem domain, without thinking deeply about what this problem is, it's very hard for you to go on to be an inventor of the next model that really solves a big problem in vision, or to be, you know, making impactful work in solving a hard problem. And also, in general, problem domain and the modeling tools themselves are never fully decoupled. They inform each other, and you see through the history of deep learning a little bit that the convolutional neural network architecture come from the need to solve a vision problem, and then vision problem helps the deep learning algorithm to evolve and back and forth. So it's really important to you know, I want you to finish this course and feel proud that you're a student of computer vision and of deep learning. So you have this, both the tool set and the in-depth understanding of how to use the tool set to tackle important problems. So it's a brief history, but doesn't mean it's a short history. So we're going to go all the way back to 540 million years ago. So why did I pick this? You know, on the scale of the Earth history, this is a fairly specific range of years. Well, so I don't know if you have heard of this, but this is a very, very curious period of the Earth's history. Biologists call this the Big Bang of evolution. Before 540 million years ago, the Earth is a very peaceful pot of water. I mean, it's a pretty big pot of water. So we have very simple organisms. These are like animals that just floats in the water. And the way they eat and hang out on a daily basis is, you know, they just float, and if some kind of food comes by near their mouth or whatever, they just open the mouth and grab it. And we don't have too many different types of animals. But something really strange happened around 540 million years. Suddenly, from the fossils we study, there's a huge explosion of species. The biologists call speciation. It's like suddenly, for some reason, something hit the earth that animals start to diversify, and they get really complex, and they start to, you start to have predators and prey, and then they have all kind of tools to survive. And what was the triggering force of this was a huge question, because people were saying, oh, did another meteoroid hit the earth, or the environment change? It turned out one of the most convincing theory is by this guy called Andrew Parker. He's a modern zoologist in Australia, from Australia. He studied a lot the fossils, and his theory is that it was the onset of the eyes. So one of the first trilobites developed an eye, a really, really simple eye. It's almost like a pinhole camera that just catches light and makes some projections and registers some information from the environment. Suddenly, life is no longer so mellow, because once you have the eye, the first thing you can do is you can go catch food. You actually know where food is. You're not just like blind and floating in the water. And once you can go catch food, guess what? The food better develop eyes and to run away from you. Otherwise, they'll be gone. So the first animal who had eyes were like in a unlimited buffet. It's like working at Google. It's just like it has the best time, eating everything they can. But because of this onset of the eyes, what the zoologists realize is the biological arms race began. Every single animal needs to learn to develop things to survive, or to you suddenly have prey and predators and all this, and the speciation began. So that's when vision began, 540 million years. And not only vision began, vision was one of the major driving force of the speciation, or the Big Bang of evolution. All right, so we're not going to follow evolution with too much detail. Another big important work that focused on engineering of vision happened around the Renaissance, and of course, it's attributed to this amazing guy, Leonardo da Vinci. So before Renaissance, throughout human civilization, from Asia to Europe to India to Arabic world, we have seen models of cameras. So Aristotle has proposed the camera through the leaves. Chinese philosopher Mozi have proposed the camera through a box with a hole. But if you look at the first documentation of really a modern-looking camera, it's called camera obscura, and that is documented by Leonardo da Vinci. I'm not going to get into the details, but this is, you get the idea that there is some kind of lens, or at least a hole to capture lights reflected from the real world, and then there is some kind of projection to capture the information of the real world image. So that's the beginning of the modern, engineering of vision. It started with wanting to copy the world and wanting to make a copy of the visual world. It hasn't got anywhere close to wanting to engineer the understanding of the visual world. Right now, we're just talking about duplicating the visual world. So that's one important work to remember. And of course, after camera obscura, then we start to see a whole series of successful, some film gets developed, like Kodak was one of the first companies developing commercial cameras, and then we start to have camcorders and all this. Another very important piece of work that I want you to be aware of as vision student is actually not an engineering work, but a piece of science work that's starting to ask the question is, how does vision work in our biological brain? We now know that it took 540 million years of evolution to get a really fantastic visual system in mammals and in humans. But what did evolution do during this time? What kind of architecture did it develop from that simple trilobite eye to today yours and mine? Well, a very important piece of work happened at Harvard by two, at that time, two very young, ambitious postdocs, Hugo and Wiesel. What they did is that they used awake but anesthetized cats, and then there was enough technology to build this little needle called electrode to push the electrode through into the skull is open into the brain of the cat, into an area what we already know called primary visual cortex. Primary visual cortex is an area that neurons do a lot of things for visual processing. But before Hugo and Wiesel, we don't really know what primary visual cortex is doing. We just know it's one of the earliest stage, other than your eyes, of course, but earliest stage for visual processing, and there's tons and tons of neurons working on vision, and we really ought to know what this is, because that's the beginning of visual process in the brain. So they put this electrode into the primary visual cortex, and interestingly, this is another interesting fact. If I don't drop all my stuff, I'll show you. Primary visual cortex, the first stage or second, depending on where you come from. I'm being very, very rough here. First stage of your cortical visual processing stage is in the back of your brain, not near your eye. Okay? It's very interesting because your olfactory cortical processing is right behind your nose. Your auditory is right behind your ear, but your primary visual cortex is the furthest from your eye. And another very interesting fact, in fact, not only the primary, there's a huge area working on vision. Almost 50% of your brain is involved in vision. Vision is the hardest and most important sensory perceptual cognitive system in the brain. I'm not saying anything else is not useful, clearly, but it takes nature this long to develop this sensory system, and it takes nature this much real estate space to be used for this system. Why? Because it's so important and it's so damn hard. That's why we need to use this much space. Okay, back to Hugo and Wiesel. They were really ambitious. They want to know what primary visual cortex is doing, because this is the beginning of our knowledge for deep learning neural network. So they were showing cats. So they put the cats in this room, and they were recording neural activities. And when I say recording neural activity, they're basically trying to see, if I put the neural electrode here, like do the neurons fire when they see something? So for example, if they show cat, their idea is, if I show this cat a fish, apparently at that time cats eat fish rather than these beans, would the cat's neuron get happy and start sending spikes? And the funny thing here is a story of scientific discovery. A scientific discovery takes both luck and care and thoughtfulness. They were showing this cat fish, whatever, mouse, flower, it just doesn't work. The cat's neuron in the primary visual cortex was silent. There was no spiking, or very little spiking, and they were really frustrated. But the good news is that there was no computer at that time. So what they have to do when they show these cats these stimuli is they have to use a slide projector. So they put a slide of a fish and then wait till the neuron spike. If the neuron doesn't spike, they take the slide out and put in another slide. And then they notice every time they change slide, like this like, you know, this squarish film, I don't even remember if they use glass or film, but whatever, the neuron spikes. That's weird, you know, like the actual mouse and fish and flower didn't drive the neuron, excite the neuron, but the movement of taking a slide out or putting a slide in did excite the neuron. It can be the cat is thinking, oh, finally they're changing the new, you know, new object for me. So it turned out there's an edge that's created by this slide that they're changing, right? The slide, whatever, it's a square rectangular plate. And that moving edge drove or excited the neurons. So they really chased after that observation. You know, if they were too frustrated or too careless, they would have missed that. But they were not. They chased after that and realized neurons in the primary visual cortex are organized in columns. And for every column of the neurons, they like to see a specific orientation of a stimuli, simple oriented bars.